Hi, my name is JOSS. I've been at Dirac for I think maybe 3 years now. Started there as an audio systems engineer. So I've been out in the field tuning and calibrating many things, many rooms, many cars. I now work in product management with research and understanding how the users use our software, which is really interesting. But before Dirac, I was an audio systems engineer, both in the professional market for concert touring globally. And I also worked with custom installation, so installing home theaters and multi-room audio and all sorts of systems in luxury property. Yeah, so I've calibrated quite a few theaters in my time, and it's really great working for Dirac and being able to use and understand the technology and teach people about it. The first question, so please explain the differences in data acquisition amongst different room correction models such as ART, Dirac Live, and bass control. So the measurement process for our three products, for room correction, for bass control, and for ART is, the process itself is largely the same, but what we might want to do is consider some different things when we're taking those measurements. So with active room treatment, you need to be a bit more precise and have more density of measurements. Room correction, what we're looking to understand from the measurements is averages. So we want to correct the phase first within the algorithm, but we want to look at the average of how the sound performs across all the seats, and then we'll make adjustments based on that average performance. So if you take more measurements, there will be more to average. If you take less measurements, then that average will be weighted differently. So bass control takes the measurements and there's some machine learning going on. So there's an iterative algorithm that will look to find the best phase relationships between subwoofers and speakers, and it will keep calculating those relationships until it's found the best ones. With ART, we're doing something a bit more on top of that. So we need more density of measurements in order to understand the sound field. So ART will understand how the sound travels across the space, across the listening position, and it will try and interpret any weaknesses or any excessive sound in any particular areas, any listening spots, and it will try and build a model based on that. So we recommend a minimum of 9 measurement positions. For a single listener, 9 would be a minimum. This way we can understand how the sound moves across the space. If we have less measurements than that, we don't really understand the relationship between all the speakers and how that wavefront travels. So when we are measuring larger spaces, we can space the measurements further apart. But what we recommend is a minimum of 30 centimeters between each measurement and a maximum of 1 meter with active room treatment. So it's 1 meter maximum between measurements. You can extend onwards from each measurement. Yes.
Not from the MLP.
No.
That's
just from the last measurement point. You don't have to take those 9 measurement points around the MLP. You could spread those across the theater as long as they're not further than 1 meter between each one.
我们可以想象是有连线这样子，就是我先量好 Adam 的位置，而且是量到他的前面这个，量完这个之后我就去量他了。他是看顺序，就是说我如果要量这个位置，必须要距离前一个量测点1公尺，我不能说量完这个点之后去量滴滴大的点，然后再来量这边，演算法就会破掉。所以必须量这个之后，跳到下一个1公尺内的点。
ART doesn't need to understand the room necessarily. Yeah, so we don't need to understand anything beyond the listening area. So we don't need to understand the whole room. We don't need to measure in front of seats. We only need to understand, the where people will sit and listen. Yeah, so measuring outside of the listening area won't give us any useful information for the algorithm to process. So we can move on to the third question. Yes, so this is in regards to the analogy that I've said in previous videos about art creating, a puzzle in the listening area where every speaker has different puzzle pieces it can contribute. Will the sound from support speakers compromise the original sound of the speakers being supported? Yes, so art is designed in a way that because we understand this wavefront, we understand how the sound travels from a main speaker. We make sure that all of the other speakers that are helping are designed or are filtered in such a way that they play at exactly the right time so that they fit the timing of the main speaker.
So as a result, it won't compromise the sound because of the precision.
Exactly. So you can sit. You won't hear the sound coming from a support speaker. You'll only hear the sound as if it's coming from the main speaker.
But what about the quality? For example, like when you've got different drivers, you got different materials, and then the sound will be a little bit different even when you're playing the same frequency at the same volume.
So it's filtered to match the target sound from the front. So each speaker, when it's supporting, it has its own filter for each support. So there's many filters stacked on top of each other, and it means that it will match the target speaker, the main speaker. So we can imagine, instead of thinking about the speakers individually, we can think about the playback channel. So instead of the front left speaker, we think of front left playback channel, and we can use all the speakers to make the best channel possible. Cool. On to the next question. So does stronger support mean stronger noise cancellation or stronger participating in this puzzle? When we look at how this works, we have each group, and then we can support each group by selecting or deselecting other groups. So when we talk about the support strength, we talk about support level, which is this parameter here. It's a negative number, but when we go to a higher number, we mean less support. So if I go to -6, that is less support than -18. So support is an input to a calculation. So stronger support means that we're allocating more potential resource to help match the target of the main speaker.
很多人想说，这个东西-18就一定会比-6强。其实不一定，这个-18的意思就是说，我给你的 quota 是18，可是你不一定要用到18，搞不好你用2就够了。所以这说我允许多少的这个资源被拿出来用，并不表示实际会被用到的资源。
So support is both a constructive and a destructive operation, meaning that it can both boost weak frequencies and reduce problematic resonances in the room.
We cannot really decide it should be more constructive or more destructive, right? It's decided by the algorithm.
Exactly. It's decided on what is best from that speaker in that moment, from that calculation. And it's dependent on what the speaker has to offer, so how well the speaker performs, but also where it is in the room. So we can also change the range that speaker plays. So we can change when it contributes, when it's a support speaker, we can change the frequency that it does that. We can do that here, but we can also do that here.
但是我们确实是可以透过限制频段的方式还有限制强度的方式来规范给到什么地步或者给多或者给少。Support high is okay, but especially support low frequency is a lot of times not so accurate. It doesn't really reflect the actual capability of the speaker.
So we have changed the way that we do this in the software. It used to be that we tried to use the detection to understand the F support low. But we found that to not be very accurate. It's very challenging with in-room measurements to understand how low a speaker can play because of room resonances, because of nulls. So it's very difficult to get that accurately, and we didn't want to risk that. So the way it works now is with most main speakers, it will default to 50 hertz unless it can't go that low. So it will be 50 hertz or higher. It won't play lower because we don't want to risk that. What we would recommend you do is look at the manufacturer's stated F3, so the -3 cutoff of the speaker, and look at that and the in-room measurements, and then set that value at whichever one of those is higher. So either the manufacturer's F3 or the in-room measurement roll-off. The next question was, why does the behavior of subwoofer change when changing support range?
我发觉就是说呢，我们去调整超低音的 support 的频段，居然会影响到整体结果，影响是非常大的。所以我就问他说，这个 support range， 我们的超低音的 support range 为什么会改变了超低音的行为？
If we consider the fact that we are co-optimizing with active room treatment, everything depends on everything else. So when we recalculate, if you change one small thing in the equation, one small parameter, the knock-on effect with everything else, how one parameter is likely to cause different elements to rebalance or compensate for this change, means that the performance could change if you do change one parameter because it's co-optimizing.
他说，因为其实我们现在是协作，所以说我改变任何一个参数，这个参数都会跟别人产生关系。我去提这个问题的原因是这样子的，我自己在调整的时候，我有2个对我调整结果的要求。第一个要求，一定要贴合我的目标曲线，这是低标。我在选目标曲线的时候，不是乱选，我不是说好高骛远，明明量测就在下面，然后我选一个标超高的。通常我第一个量测曲线一定是尽量跟我量测结果去贴合，甚至我就用 Dirac 的这个 default 的曲线也行，但是计算结果一定要贴合那个曲线，否则不合格。第二件事情就是在调整完之后，我一定要看到这个缩小，因为这个 spread 的意义是在各量测点，也就是你量测范围内的声音表现的差异，你可以这样去思考。所以如果说假设它这么大，那就表示说差异是大的。可是你要想想看，你的9个量测点也就不过在这里而已。那换句话说，如果差异大，就是你这样子声音就跑掉了。所以应该要让它是尽量的想办法改变曲线，或者是改变我们的参数，让它这个能够缩到跟我的目标曲线是一样。那有的时候你在超低音 support 的 range 是一样的，但是你去改变它的 support value， 不一定是多，不一定是少，但是呢，却造成 spread 的这个粗或细是这样。所以我就问他说，而且有的时候你知道，你去改变它之后，整个那个有时候改错了，它那个凹就会跳出来。对，所以我就在问他说，为什么去改一个超低音，然后改一点点，可是呢，它影响却这么大
？Yeah. So with this example we're seeing here with this corrected spread, this room was a 5.1 system with some small on-wall speakers with maybe 4 or 5 inch speakers with one subwoofer. If we want to improve this spread, so this is quite a large spread for me, like this I would not be too pleased with. The best way to increase this and make this spread better would be to add more subwoofers or add larger speakers that were more bass capable.
所以我们说可多不要少，可大不要小，真的是这样，原厂都这么说。
So people use REW on the main listening position to review the result of ART calibration. What's my opinion? So we've seen many users do this, and many users are really happy with the results. With REW, if you look at the waterfall plot, you can really see how the decay is drastically improved with active room treatment. At the moment, we can't view that waterfall plot in Dirac Live, unfortunately, but REW is a good way to do it. It's interesting as well to see, obviously, not just the main listening position, but to measure the rest of the room as well and understand how consistent it is and how consistent the decay is. It's interesting to see within the software, we can look at a prediction of the corrected response here. And this is actually very accurate. if we measure this against REW, we will see the same results or very similar results. The important thing is to make sure if you're comparing against REW, you use exactly the same measurement positions and you average them to create this result, because this is the average in the room. How will Dirac respond to the demanding sound quality request from the high-end industry? So I think active room treatment is the answer, is the response to this demand for higher sound quality. Because with an untreated room, if you have lots of resonance, you won't hear higher res formats, you won't hear more detail if your room is uncalibrated. That is the first step to getting the highest quality. When we're talking about the high-end market, art should be, a prerequisite to that. But when we talk about high res, it is supported on some devices, but that's up to the manufacturer of the device. That's not a decision for Dirac, but we do support it on some devices. How will AI technology affect Dirac Live tech, or what's the next step or phase of Dirac Live? So what's interesting is elements of machine learning are already implemented in the algorithms. And of course, we explore further optimizations and ways that we can make those calculations better. One of the key elements to consider is the subjective element of calibration. So, we can consider what is correct, but we can consider what people like. And I think that as it is right now, there's an amount of parameters that can help you reach what you like, because we can't necessarily tell you 100% what the best sound is. We can just give you the tools and the parameters to help you get that in your own space, because every space is different and every preference is different as well. So I think what could be interesting is, maybe in the future, if we could look at a way for AI tools to understand personal preference. So, we can understand what someone subjectively wants and their taste, and then be able to take that and put it into, the parameter changes to get what you want out of it. Could Dirac allow users to define their desired RT60 reverberation time? It's not really how the target and the algorithm are designed to work. If you want to read more, there's on the Dirac website, there's a really interesting white paper that explains a little more detail on how it works. But it is possible to change the amount of reverberation. It's just not necessarily a direct parameter.
它可以去改变残响时间，但是它却没有办法去针对一个特定的值去做改变。ART 没有办法去写一个数值说你现在给我达成这个 millisecond 数，是没办法的。但是我们确实可以透过 ART 的参数调整，让这个实际上测到的 RT 值升高或减少。There's a possibility that in the corrected section of the graph, you can show something similar to spread expression of how the RT works after the calibration.
Like a waterfall plot. We've had that feedback, and we get a lot of great feedback, and we do, we look at ways that we can introduce these things. I can't say anything specifically, but it's great feedback, so thank you. If there was a way to make the low dry, but then have 80 to 150 a little more lively. So the way that we could do that is to reduce the F support high on some of the support groups. So you have less groups total supporting all the way up to 150. In this instance, when we look at group 1, I might want to reduce the F support high on the other groups.
支援高的频段往下拉 ，ART 就不会跑到那么高的地方去。那就是说，你80赫兹以上就会听起来水分比较多了，因为它那个残响就会变多。因为你越往上就越干净嘛， 那你就放下一点，那就会水一点这样子。How do you decide on the number? How do we decide on the number? Like how low should it go?
This would be personal taste in this instance, and I think it will be different in every room. So if you have some passive acoustic treatment, that will affect how low you might want to go with this number.